If you'd have told me 10 years ago I'd be using wireless electronic gears and a seat post on my mountain bike, I probably would have laughed at you, to be fair, but that's exactly what SRAM released back in 2019. A wireless transmission using their own encrypted signal. It clears up your cockpit and it's even got loads of cool customization. Got to say, I've been obsessed with it ever since. But just like many of you, the pessimistic side of me has questioned whether batteries and electronic tech actually belong on the modern mountain bike. So in today's video, we're going to have a little bit of a closer look at SRAM's AXS. Since the launch of the SRAM AXS wireless system, many of you have asked us questions about the technology and its use on a mountain bike. And many of you as well have been concerned about it because you've probably been happier or happy just using a mechanical version of what this system would actually be replacing. So SRAM sent me a couple of mechs and a couple of controllers, and they've asked me to have a bit of a deeper dive into the technology and to show you why you shouldn't be afraid of using it. I first saw the prototypes of SRAM's AXS transmission in 2018 on Nino Schurter's bike. I think it was in Stellenbosch at the World Cup. And I was completely hooked in by the capabilities and the possibilities of the system, even then at the prototype black box stage. The idea of removing cables from the bike was just brilliant to me. You're removing the inner cable and the outer cable, and of course the inconsistencies that you get with your shifting associated with that. I mean, that in itself, as well as adding some seriously cool tech, really does appeal to me. So why would you want to go wireless and electronic in the first place? Well, it's cool, isn't it? It's minimal, there's less clutter, there's less noise, so you're removing stuff off the bars, you haven't got your cables and hoses all jostling around together like some sort of snake's wedding. It's dead easy to set up, you have perfect shifting, and you have zero inconsistencies, unlike mechanical gears, which are subject to the conditions that you ride the bike in and how you maintain it. And you can completely customize the way that you want to use it, both physically by changing the touch points on the actual paddles themselves. You can see the two different styles here. And of course, within the app, where you can change the orientation of how it changes gear, even how many gears it will change at a time. And in fact, the app's even learning how you change gears. And in future, it may even be able to make recommendations for you, especially if hooked up to things like cycle computers and other intelligent systems. Don't forget, the AXS is also part of a further ecosystem. You've got the Reverb wireless AXS seat post as well. And of course, in more modern times, we've seen the flight attendant electronic wireless suspension system as well. But I'm not here to convince you to use AXS. I'm merely here to convince you why you shouldn't be afraid of using the wireless technology. Now let's address some of the concerns that many of you have about using this on your bikes. Firstly, electronics and bikes ridden in wet and muddy conditions. That's a terrible idea, surely. Well, I ride with a smartwatch, and that's waterproof. I ride, in fact, with my iPhone in my pocket, which seems to be waterproof. That's not failed yet. And also, SRAM's AXS system is completely waterproof. The mech itself is rated to IP69K, which is the highest standard for dust and high pressure, high temperature washing. The sort of stuff associated, in fact, with cleaning cement mixers and dump trucks. Yeah, like industrial stuff. And then you've got the actual touch point controller itself. So this is rated to IPX7, which basically means it will pass standards where they submerge it in a metre of water for 30 minutes a pop. So absolutely fine, unless of course you plan on treating a mountain bike like a jet ski. Of course, trying to prove how waterproof the battery is conjures up all sorts of weird and sometimes inappropriate test scenarios as well, like, I don't know, accidentally finding the mech in a washing machine, something like that, or perhaps even just doing the washing up, you know. But hey ho. But really, with the amount of wet weather riding I've done over the last couple of years, I shouldn't even have to talk about the waterproofness. I mean, my bikes are ridden a couple of times a week and they're washed a couple of times a week after being ridden in wet and mud, and they're absolutely hammered with this thing as well a couple of times a week. So much so, in fact, I even had to replace the O-rings on this recently because I've been using it so much. Well, if that's not enough to reassure you, then these are also dusting proof. Yeah, and he breaks everything. I mean, everything.
Uh-oh.
What about durability then? Because, well, you'd have to be mad to hang an expensive derailleur like this off your bike, wouldn't you? Everyone knows it's the first thing you're going to break off when you hit a rock. Well, SRAM have considered this in their development. Now look at the derailleur. It's massively oversized when you compare it to a non-electronic wireless derailleur. And the reason for that is because it houses a motor system. Now to make that motor system work functionally and accurately every single shift, there obviously has to be a lot more material on the actual mech itself to handle that. It's really overbuilt in a really good way. And it's also got two clutches as part of the design. One of the clutches is designed to manage the chain tension, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with, but the other one, interestingly, is an override clutch. So the override clutch essentially disengages the motor anytime the derailleur suffers an impact. It could be hitting a rock, it could be falling off your bike and the bike leaning on its side, anything like that. And it basically overrides the motor, enabling the mech to move out of harm's way. The motor then engages and brings it back to the last place. It's really smart. Check this out. It's brilliant. But people will always grumble about the rear mech on a bike. I mean, look at it down there, just sort of dangling away in harm's way. I mean, admittedly, it's one of the first things you're likely to strike when you're sort of dicing it through technical terrain. But when did you last rip a derailleur off your bike? Now, I've been running SRAM AXS on various bikes for a couple of years now, and I've been running the GX AXS on this bike since before it came out. I had an embargoed set, and I've gone out my way to not treat it nicely. Now, I've just been trying to ride it in a real world way that addresses any issues that people might have. And I mean, look at the state of the derailleur. It's got loads of smashes and nicks and scrapes and stuff all over it. I've hit it repeatedly. In fact, I've hit it on that exact rock in front of me. Pretty sure I've hit the one behind me as well. And even earlier this year, I did 3 days of runs on the SRAM test track, ironically, near Malaga. And for consistency, I had to run the same run every single time, which meant going through this little rocky V-shaped notch. And I tagged that rear derailleur almost every single time through there. And I was thinking, like, sooner or later, the luck's gonna run out, I'm gonna pull the thing off. But the worst thing that happened was I hit it so hard that it actually knocked me offline. And I front wheeled another rock, thinking, oh, this is it, I'm gonna go over the bars here, but whatever, I got away with it. And not once have I ever been concerned about it. I mean, really, I could just sit there and smash it to pieces with a golf club. Or skid into a massive pile of bricks. But all that's going to do is just highlight complete and utter misuse for it. This thing was solid when I bolted it on. It's still solid after all the use it's had. Look at the size of the thing. I mean, it's massive. It's designed to cope with the hits. Now, if you want to make the most of the shifting technology that this brings, then you really shouldn't be worried about the durability of it. And the last thing really to reference is battery life, because anything using a battery is obviously going to be depleting the battery as you're using it. So on the rear derailleur, you can expect to get 20 hours of changing gear, basically with that. That's a lot of changing gear. And to be honest, the amount of times I've been riding it and I've forgotten that I've even got battery powered gear on my bikes, it's not really an issue, yeah? Then you've got the actual controller itself that uses a CR32 in there, and that will last you 2 years before you need to replace that. So really don't see that as much of an issue. It can be part of your workflow to charge after your ride. Now, to make this video, here's a good example. I charged my laptop 4 times in doing that, so depleted the battery 4 times. We used 3 batteries in that camera that's filming. I think we used 8 AA batteries in the wireless mic setup. I don't even know how many times we've had to charge and fiddle around with the coloured lights we're using in here to get a bit of ambience. The phone, charged it 3 times, and in fact, it's actually charging right now. But AXS, if I open the app, it's still chugging on the bike behind me that's been ridden non-stop over the last couple of weeks. So there we go. not really much of an issue, is it? And I actually even chucked one of these in a freezer at home just to see how the cold would basically affect it. So last night I actually bunged one of the mechs inside the freezer with my GoPro on time lapse, and well, we'll deal with that in a minute. And here's the mech, and the little light doesn't stop working, I guess, run out of battery. But let's have a look at this then. So as you can see, it is well, pretty freezing. It's like sticky to touch because the ice. There we go. And pair it. There we go. That's been in the freezer since what, 8 o'clock last night, and it's now 2:15 next day. You can see the ice on it, and it still works. So there's 3 levels available to you in the AXS system. Firstly, you've got GX, which is very much the entry-level point into AXS. Then you've got X01, and then of course you've got the XX1, which is the range-topping level. Okay, so let's look at the rear mech first, and we'll start with the entry-level point, which is GX AXS. So you're talking about €406 for the derailleur itself. It weighs in around 454 grams, and that's because it has the steel lower cage on there. This is obviously a bit heavier, it's a bit more basic, but actually it's quite durable. And then moving on from there, you have X01. So this loses a significant amount of weight. It weighs 390 grams, and that's because it manages to use an alloy cage on the bottom, and you're talking about €573 for the privilege of that. And then you have the flagship XX1 race spec derailleur. So this is where the technology came in from the black box level, and it's very much a race orientated performance unit. So you've got carbon fiber lower cage here, you've got alloy plate on the inside, and you've got titanium hardware on there. As a result, it's a bit lighter at 373 grams. It's more expensive at €831, and it's only really 100 grams heavier than some mechanical derailleurs. And when it comes to the shifters or the controllers, there's actually only 2. So starting the range off is the GX offering, which you can see on my bike behind there, and that retails for €164. If you want the better finish, then what you want is the one that's shared between X01 and XX1. Slightly different finish, slightly different band on there, €229. Okay, so the last word then. Certainly, electronic and wireless gears, they might not necessarily be for everyone, but you certainly shouldn't be afraid of the technology associated with them, and especially not in real-world mountain biking use. In my eyes, just by removing from the equation the inner gear cable and the outer gear cable, that in itself is almost enough to convince me of this stuff, because of the fact that friction equals inconsistency in gears. It's brilliant to me. Now, it's this sort of inconsistency, this exact sort of inconsistency, that led to disc brakes becoming mass market on mountain bikes. Look at them now. You get them everywhere from entry-level price points all the way through to the top-end race bikes. But when they were first introduced, people used to laugh at disc brakes. Even our roadie friends, they're starting to get on board with this sort of stuff. But even them, with some of them, it's like they're chewing water or something. Look, it's entirely feasible that off-road group sets are going to start featuring and including more and more wireless technology as time goes on. And all I can say is it's something you definitely shouldn't be afraid of. SRAM AXS, against all odds, they delivered a group set that no one really thought we needed. It's brilliant, it's wireless, it's friction-free, it's consistent. I'd love to know what you think about wireless gears on your mountain bike. Are you interested in them? Have you already got them? Do you aspire to own something like this? Let us know what you think in the comments underneath, and we'll see you in another video soon. Take care.